Yeah, Charlie was a guy that, Calgary was a great organization, and they found good people with lots of character like Charlie, and it seemed like young guy that came up and wanted to be involved physically, I was involved with them too, but I was the captain of St. Louis then, and I remember Charlie. For all I remember him was he was a big son of a gun, and he played hard, and I knew he had a lot of character from that moment on.
He said he beat you up at that fight. Do you remember that?
I don't know if he did that, but anyhow, everybody I fought was a lot bigger than me, you knew he was going to stay around, and that was a stepping stone for, like, when Charlie was young, he had to play hard. He wasn't. He might not admit it, but and the sign of a good player is somebody that knows himself. And he was fortunate to get drafted in a or not drafted, but signed by a great organization in Calgary, and guys like Al McNeil and those people that understood him and made him make himself as good as he could be. Charlie was like a lot of young guys, and he was with a really good winning organization there, and in Calgary, and he was like a 5, 6, 7 defenseman, a young guy that wanted to play more, and his agent probably thought should have been a lot better than what he was, or playing more than what he was, as every agent does, but he was traded to us in St. Louis, and it was at the end of my playing days in St. Louis, and but again, he got to play a more significant role and a more major role in our team, but he was who he was. He played hard. He had to keep his game simple. He was a good skater for a big guy. He had to be aggressive to 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 be an important factor in the hockey game every night, and to be an abrasive player and keep his game simple. But for a big guy, he could really skate. He had great range. He was a good teammate, and like I use the word abrasive and aggressive. Charlie had to add that to, not to add, he had to make sure that was part of his game for him to be a successful player. I was always a player that I always looked around the room, and I knew I was only as good as every other guy sitting in the room, and I became a coach after, and you know you carried that on. And Charlie was a guy. Everybody, you found out where they come and what they did and what type of person they are, and we've all got obstacles you got to jump over in life, and people telling you can't do this and you can't do that, and he was a guy that overcame a lot of those, and playing just to play in the NHL is a successful career. Guys like him, like he was one of a real good supporting cast, and there's leaders and followers on every successful team, and we had he played on a very good team in Calgary, and then he came to us, and we were an incredibly close-knit group of players, and we had to be that way to win. And I always thought Charlie was a great team player, and he was, if somebody was in trouble, he was right there behind you, and he was a character player. He just played hard, and sometimes players have to push themselves to be that way, and sometimes players to play in the National Hockey League at the top level have to do things at that level that they didn't do anyplace else. And you sign of success is consistency, so you got to do that all the time. But Charlie was a good team player, and he had to keep every player to be successful has to keep his game simple, and then everything grows from there. But like I said, Charlie, he was a great skater for a big man, and he played hard every night. And when he came to play hard and with his physical presence, he was a presence on your team. It's interesting, when Charlie was traded from Calgary to St. Louis, we got some young players in St. Louis in return, like Brett Hull and Charlie and guys like that. But we gave up. It was kind of a joke around the NHL back then. The St. Louis Blues were a farm team for the Calgary Flames. Rob Ramage, Rick Natras, Joey Mullen, Mark Hunter, Doug Gilmour, Rick Wamsley. When they won the Cup, it was all some of the best players in the National Hockey League who played in St. Louis a few years before. So when those guys did go to Calgary, what we tried to do in return is get younger players back with character and with tremendous upside. And obviously Charlie isn't Brad Hall, and but they did have important qualities that are ingredients that you had to have on a hockey club to win, and they added to that to your team. Well, he's I can remember that series like it was yesterday, and again, Toronto had a veteran team, and Charlie was just one of those guys that, like we're saying, his physical presence was very important, and that's, you got to have that atmosphere around, or that type of person around your team, and then if you can go out and play top 4 minutes, and if I remember, we had a couple of guys hurt that series, and so he played an important role, it's funny how a playoff series can define a player or something, but he was very good, and he was a good player in that series to give us a chance to win. Jock was a heck of a coach, and he was a guy that played on emotion and intensity. And Jock wasn't. I don't. This isn't a knock against Jock. He wasn't an X and O's guy. Why Jock was successful is he knew where to put players in positions to succeed, and when their emotional level was where it should be, and that added to the intensity of the game, and he had that uncanny sense to be able to put players in that, and that's why Charlie got to play a little bit more than maybe he had in some situations in the past. In that series, he was on top of his game, and the guys in Toronto didn't like how he played.